I, 28M, never imagined I would be in this situation, but here I am. Let me give you some background about my family so you can understand why this hurts so much. I have an older brother, Eddie, 32M, who has always been my parents' favorite child. Growing up, everything revolved around Eddie, his achievements, his problems, his needs. He was outgoing, played sports, and had lots of friends while I was more reserved and focused on academics. Our parents never tried to hide their favoritism. If we both had events on the same day, they would always go to Eddie's. When I got straight A's, they barely acknowledged it, but if Eddie managed to get a C instead of failing, there would be a celebration dinner. Every Christmas, his pile of presents was always bigger. Every birthday, his parties were extravagant while mine were just small family gatherings. I learned to accept this dynamic early on and focused on building my own life. After college, I got a good job in finance and worked hard to become financially independent. Eddie, on the other hand, jumped from job to job, never staying anywhere longer than a few months. Our parents always made excuses for him. The jobs weren't challenging enough, his bosses were unfair, he was too creative for corporate life. Meanwhile, they criticized my boring career choice even though I was the one with a stable income and savings. 5 years ago, I met Sarah, 27F, at work. She had just joined our company as a marketing coordinator, and we hit it off immediately. She was smart, funny, and understood my passion for financial planning and investing. After a few months of being friends, we started dating. Everything felt perfect, we had the same values, similar goals, and complemented each other perfectly. A year later, we moved in together, and last year, I proposed. Sarah got along well with my family initially, but things changed after we got engaged. Eddie started acting weird around her, making inappropriate jokes and commenting about how she was wasted on me. He would show up at our apartment unannounced when I was at work, claiming he was just in the neighborhood. I noticed Sarah started acting differently too. She became distant and would get defensive whenever I mentioned Eddie's strange behavior. My parents absolutely loved Sarah at first, but they kept making odd comments about how she would make a perfect wife, not specifically for me, just in general. They would invite her to family events even when I couldn't make it due to work. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags, but I was too trusting. I had been saving aggressively for our wedding for the past 3 years. I wanted to give Sarah her dream wedding without going into debt. I managed to save nearly $50,000 while also putting money aside for a house down payment. My parents knew about these savings because I had stupidly mentioned it during a family dinner, thinking they would finally be proud of my financial responsibility. Instead, they made comments about how I was showing off and suggested I should help Eddie with his debt since I had extra money. 3 months ago, Sarah started acting really strange. She would stay late at work, guard her phone, and pick fights over small things. Then one day, I came home to find her packing her things. She said she needed space and wasn't ready for marriage. She handed back the engagement ring and moved out that same night. She blocked me on all social media and changed her number. I was completely blindsided and devastated. My parents' reaction to our broken engagement was bizarre. Instead of being supportive, they seemed almost relieved. My mom said things like everything happens for a reason and maybe this is for the best. Eddie started coming around more often, acting like he was trying to cheer me up, but something felt off about his behavior. Last week, my parents called me saying they needed to have an important family meeting. When I arrived at their house, Eddie and Sarah were there, holding hands. My parents had this weird excited energy about them as they announced that Eddie and Sarah were engaged and planning to get married in 2 months. I felt like I was in some sick nightmare. Sarah couldn't even look me in the eye while Eddie grinned like he had won some prize. Then my parents dropped the real bomb. They expected me to pay for Eddie and Sarah's wedding using my savings. Their reasoning? Since I wasn't using the money for my own wedding anymore, I should do the right thing and help my brother have his perfect day. They said it would be therapeutic for me and help me move on. When I asked how long Eddie and Sarah had been together, they admitted the two had been seeing each other for 6 months, meaning their affair started 3 months before Sarah broke off our engagement. I was shocked to learn that my parents had known about the affair the whole time. They actually encouraged it because they thought Sarah and Eddie made a more suitable couple. They had been inviting Sarah to family dinners behind my back, helping her and Eddie arrange secret meetings, and even helped her plan how to break off our engagement gently. When I refused to pay for their wedding, all hell broke loose. Eddie started crying about how he and Sarah were soulmates and how they never meant to hurt me, it just happened. My parents called me selfish and immature, saying I was trying to punish Eddie because I was jealous of his happiness. They said since I was the financially responsible one, it was my duty to help my struggling brother. I lost it at that point. I told them they were all disgusting for betraying me like this and that they could go to hell. My mom started crying about how I was tearing the family apart with my vindictiveness. My dad threatened to cut me out of their will if I didn't help pay for the wedding. Eddie tried to play the big brother card, saying we could get past this if I just supported his happiness. I walked out and blocked them all on everything. Since then, they've been telling everyone in the family that I'm being unreasonable and trying to ruin Eddie's chance at happiness out of spite. Some relatives have been calling me, saying I should be the bigger person because family is family and blood is thicker than water. Others are suggesting I should help pay for the wedding to keep the peace. I'm using the wedding money as a down payment on a house instead. I refuse to fund the wedding of my cheating ex-fiancé and the brother who betrayed me. My parents are livid about this decision, but I honestly don't care anymore. The way I see it, they made their choice when they chose to support Eddie and Sarah's affair instead of being honest with me. Am I really the asshole here? Because my entire family seems to think I am. Update 1: Things have gotten even more intense since my last post. First, thank you everyone for your supportive comments. You all helped me stay strong in my decision not to fund their wedding. But what happened next completely turned my world upside down. A few days after I refused to pay for the wedding, my Aunt Lisa, Mom's sister, contacted me asking to meet for coffee. She said she had important information I needed to know. I was hesitant at first because most of my family had been trying to convince me to do the right thing and pay for the wedding, but my aunt had always been different, more honest and less involved in family drama. When we met, she looked really nervous and kept checking her phone to make sure no one was calling her. She started by apologizing for keeping this secret for so long, saying she had fought with my parents many times about telling me the truth. Then she dropped a bombshell that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Eddie isn't my biological brother. According to my aunt, my parents adopted Eddie when he was 2 years old, about a year before I was born. They had struggled to conceive and decided to adopt. Then, surprisingly, my mom got pregnant with me right after the adoption was finalized. They never told Eddie about being adopted because they were afraid it would traumatize him. Instead, they overcompensated by always putting him first and giving him whatever he wanted. My aunt showed me old photos and documents as proof. She had copies of the adoption papers that she'd kept all these years because she never agreed with my parents' decision to hide the truth. Looking at these documents, so many things started making sense. Why Eddie and I look nothing alike, he's tall and blonde while I'm average height with dark hair, why there are no baby pictures of him in our family albums before age 2, and why our parents were so obsessed with making sure he felt special. She revealed even more shocking details. Apparently, my parents had been paying for Eddie's therapy since he was a teenager because he had severe abandonment issues. He would have major meltdowns anytime they said no to him or if things didn't go his way. His therapist had suggested telling him the truth about his adoption years ago, but my parents refused, thinking it would destroy him. Instead, they just kept giving in to all his demands. My aunt explained that their extreme favoritism wasn't just about spoiling him, it was their twisted way of compensating for the guilt they felt about keeping his adoption a secret. Every time they chose him over me, every time they praised his minimal efforts while ignoring my achievements, they were trying to make sure he never felt unwanted or different. The most infuriating part was learning about their involvement with Sarah. My aunt revealed that my parents had actively pushed Sarah towards Eddie because they were worried about his pattern of failed relationships. They thought Sarah was stable and responsible, unlike his usual girlfriends, and would be good for him. They had been inviting her to family events without me, telling her stories about how Eddie needed someone like her, and subtly undermining my relationship with her for months. I was processing all this information when my aunt mentioned something that made my blood boil. My parents had actually told Sarah about Eddie's adoption and his emotional issues, asking her to help him by being there for him, while she was still engaged to me. They painted Eddie as this vulnerable, broken person who needed Sarah's love and support, making her feel like she had to save him. They had manipulated her emotions while letting her believe I was cold and unfeeling compared to Eddie's sensitive soul. After my aunt left, I sat in that coffee shop for hours, going through old family photos on my phone and seeing everything in a new light. All those family vacations where Eddie got to choose the destination, all those times my achievements were downplayed to avoid making him feel bad, all made sense now. They weren't just playing favorites, they were desperately trying to protect their lie. I decided to confront my parents with this information. When I showed up at their house, they initially tried to deny everything. But when I showed them the copies of the adoption papers my aunt had given me, they broke down. My mom started crying hysterically, begging me not to tell Eddie. My dad just sat there, looking defeated, before finally admitting everything. They confessed that their pushing Sarah towards Eddie wasn't just about his happiness, they were terrified he would find out about the adoption during the wedding planning with me. They thought if he was the one getting married instead, they could control the narrative and keep their secret safe. They actually believed they were protecting both Eddie and me by orchestrating this whole situation. The next day, Sarah reached out through a mutual friend's phone. She had found out about the adoption from my parents after they had a meltdown and told her everything. She said she felt horrible about her part in this mess and claimed she only got closer to Eddie because my parents had convinced her I was cheating on her. They had shown her edited screenshots of conversations with an ex-girlfriend, which I later found out they had created using an old phone of mine, to make her believe I was unfaithful. Sarah said she wanted to meet and explain everything, saying she had been manipulated by my parents and wanted to make things right. I replied telling her that while I understood she had been manipulated, she was still an adult who chose to believe lies about me without ever asking me directly. I told her to never contact me again and blocked the friend's number she had used. I haven't decided what to do with this information yet. Part of me wants to expose everything just to watch their perfect facade crumble, but another part of me feels strangely detached from all of it. These people aren't really my family anymore, they're just people who lied to me my entire life. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but right now I'm focusing on closing on my new house and moving forward with my life. Update 2: The situation has exploded in ways I never expected. Everything came crashing down last weekend at what was supposed to be Eddie and Sarah's engagement party. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I heard everything from my Aunt Lisa, who witnessed it all. Apparently, my cousin Emma had too much to drink at the party and started talking to Eddie about family genetics. She mentioned something about how funny it was that he was the only blonde person in our entire family. When Eddie brushed it off, Emma, who had no idea about the adoption secret, casually said, "Well, that makes sense since you're adopted." The entire room went silent. Eddie looked at our parents, expecting them to deny it, but their faces said everything. He started demanding answers right there in front of all the guests. My parents tried to usher him into another room, but he refused to move. That's when everything came out. My dad, probably realizing there was no way to hide it anymore, admitted that they had adopted him when he was 2. Eddie completely lost it. He started screaming about how his whole life had been a lie. During his meltdown, he revealed even more family secrets that I hadn't known about. It turns out my parents hadn't just been paying for his therapy, they had been financially supporting him entirely. They had been paying his rent for his luxury apartment that he claimed he could afford with his successful business. They had been covering his credit card bills, car payments, and even his gambling debts. My dad admitted they had taken out a second mortgage on their house last year to pay off $200,000 that Eddie had lost at underground poker games. All this time they had been telling me I needed to learn financial independence and refused to help me with college because it would build character. I had worked part-time jobs throughout college and taken out student loans while they were secretly paying for Eddie's lavish lifestyle. Sarah, who was at the party, looked shocked by these revelations. According to my aunt, she had no idea about Eddie's gambling problems or that he was essentially living off our parents. She thought he was a successful business owner who had built everything himself. When Eddie started raging about how everyone had lied to him, he let slip that he had only pursued Sarah because our parents had convinced him that having a stable partner would help his image and make it easier for them to keep supporting him. Eddie ended up trashing the entire party venue. He flipped tables, broke the expensive china our mom had brought for the party, and threw the engagement cake at the wall. When my parents tried to calm him down, he shoved past them and stormed out. He took my dad's car keys on his way out and disappeared. For 3 days, nobody knew where he was. Our parents filed a missing person report, but the police found his phone dumped in a trash can at a gas station. During those 3 days, my parents discovered that Eddie had maxed out all their credit cards. He had withdrawn cash advances and made large purchases at various casinos. They're now over $100,000 in additional debt. Eddie finally surfaced yesterday. He didn't come home. Instead, he sent a group text to the family announcing he was calling off the wedding because he needed to find himself and deal with his trauma. He blamed our parents for ruining his life by lying to him, blamed Sarah for not being understanding enough about his emotional journey, and somehow even blamed me for not telling him about the adoption, even though I had only found out recently myself. Sarah has been trying to contact me nonstop since the party. She keeps sending emails, since she's still blocked everywhere else, saying she had no idea about any of this and that she made a huge mistake choosing Eddie. She claims she realizes now that our parents had manipulated her and that she wants to explain everything. I haven't responded. The family is completely divided now. Some relatives, particularly on my mom's side, are actually blaming me for everything. They say if I had just kept quiet about the adoption and paid for the wedding like a good brother, none of this would have happened. Others, who have watched my parents favor Eddie our entire lives, are finally seeing the truth about their toxic behavior. My parents are in serious financial trouble. The bank is threatening to foreclose on their house because they've missed several mortgage payments while trying to deal with Eddie's latest gambling spree. They tried reaching out to me through my Aunt Lisa, hinting that since I had caused this situation by exposing family secrets, I should help them financially. I told my aunt to tell them they're dead to me. I'm hearing rumors that Eddie has been spotted at various casinos in Las Vegas, but I honestly don't care anymore. My parents made their choice years ago when they decided to prioritize their adopted son's feelings over having an honest relationship with either of their children. Now they can deal with the consequences. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but right now I'm focused on closing on my new house and moving forward with my life. Update 3: This will be my final update. A lot has happened in the past few months, and I think it's time to close this chapter of my life permanently. My parents lost their house last month. The bank finally foreclosed after they couldn't keep up with the payments. They tried everything to save it, even attempted to take out more loans, but their credit was destroyed from all the debt they took on for Eddie. When they realized they had no options left, they showed up at my new house unannounced, crying about how they had nowhere to go. They brought up how they had sacrificed everything for their children and said it was my duty as their son to help them in their time of need. I didn't even let them in. I spoke to them through my security camera system and told them to leave before I called the police. They spent 2 hours in their car in my driveway, probably thinking I would cave in, but I didn't. They finally left when I actually started dialing 911. They're now living with my mom's sister, not Aunt Lisa, their other sister who always enabled their behavior. Eddie eventually came back after running out of money in Las Vegas. He had lost another $80,000 at the casinos using credit cards he had taken out in our parents' names. Instead of showing any remorse, he went straight to our parents demanding more money. He said he had a foolproof system to win everything back if they just gave him one more chance. When they told him they had nothing left to give, no house, no savings, no credit, he completely cut contact with them. Sarah has been relentless in trying to reach me. She showed up at my house 3 times. The first time, I didn't answer the door. The second time, she tried to wait for me to come home from work, but my new security system alerted me that someone was on my property, so I called the police and had her removed. The third time, she left a 10-page letter in my mailbox explaining how she had been manipulated by my parents and Eddie, and how she had realized I was the one all along. I threw it in the shredder without reading it. Some family members are still trying to guilt me into helping my parents. They keep saying things like they may have made mistakes, but they're still your parents and family should stick together in hard times. I blocked most of them except Aunt Lisa. She's been the only one who stood by me through all of this, and she's actually helped me process a lot of my childhood trauma. My relationship with Aunt Lisa has grown stronger. She introduced me to her friend's daughter Maria about a month ago. We've been taking things slow, but she's completely different from Sarah. She has her own successful career, comes from a healthy family background, and most importantly, she believes in direct communication instead of playing games. My parents still try to reach me through different numbers and emails. They've even started sending messages through my colleagues at work. Each time, they have a new story about how they've changed and realized their mistakes. Last week, they sent a group email to the entire family claiming they were going to therapy and wanted to heal the family bonds. I know it's just another manipulation tactic because they need money. Life is actually really good now. I got a major promotion at work, my new house is completely furnished, and I'm planning to start my own investment consulting business next year. Sometimes I think about how different things might have been if my parents had just been honest from the beginning, but then I remember that their lies helped me see their true nature. The family is shattered beyond repair, but I'm at peace with that. I've learned that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from toxic people, even if they're family. I've built a new life without their drama, and I'm never looking back. I want to thank everyone who supported me through this journey. Your comments helped me stay strong when I doubted myself. This will be my last update. It's time to close this chapter completely and focus on my future.